Thank you, Sandeep. I think you have given us a very fair idea of not only uh, what actually constitutes unethical practices in publication, but also how to avoid. And I think one of the things which you pointed out at the end, towards the end of your presentation, that it sometimes it can be completely unintentional, and sometimes as an author, as a researcher, we are not even aware that you are indulging in unethical practices, or sometimes reproducing your own work or reproducing works from others. So I think that is something which all of us have at some point of time we would have certainly faced some of these issues. And thanks a lot for clarifying a lot of doubts, and also raising perhaps a lot of doubts in the minds of all of us. And there would be lots of questions from many of us here. May I, request Professor Kishishian, if he has any queries or comments, to come back here, sir.
Thank you very much for the presentation, which was first rate, as one expects from Palgrave editors. Earlier, Professor Kumaraswamy was stating that they published a lot of books on the Middle East. My Succession in Saudi Arabia was published in 2001 by Palgrave, and that was the beginning of a long journey. But what I would do, I have two questions actually. One is there is a missing slide in your presentation, which I hope you will add for future presentations when you speak to different audiences as well. And that has to do with the ethical relationship that publishers have with authors. Now, the important thing is that I have published 15 books so far, and I've dealt with several editors, and my royalties are very tiny. I get between 7.5% and 10% royalty. The bulk of the money goes. Of course, I don't sell a lot of copies. I am not a popular writer, but nevertheless, I think that there is something to be said about the kind of relationship that editors have to establish with authors. Not all of the authors are university professors that have a separate paycheck coming from the university, and that writing is a bonus that is added. So I will really focus on that, because it's a mutual relationship. And the second point, which is really a question that I have to ask you, is that the available programs that can double check on plagiarism, that can check on all kinds of mechanical issues, all of these can be checked, of course. There is no problem with that. But how do you actually evaluate as an editor the value of a contribution? The value of a contribution, let's be honest, 99%, well, I shouldn't say 99%, I should say 90% of everything that is being published has already been published before. It doesn't take rocket science. We're repeating all the time. We are all borrowing from each other. We're adding on each other's ideas, and we're trying to take the ball to the next line, if you would like. So how do you evaluate genuine, original work? And that is really very hard. You have to rely, I suppose, on a network of reviewers who are on top of their fields. But that's, I would submit, much easier said than done, because all of us are bombarded with all kinds of pressures. So my question really is on those 2 points. The second one, of course, is very dear to me, because I take the reviewer responsibility very seriously. And I really spend a lot of time, not just reading the article once, but twice sometimes 3 times, to make sure that I am fair. So there, I've said my piece.
Thank you so much for the questions, sir. So the first one, the talk about the royalty and remuneration. I'm afraid I do not have much to add to it, because this is the global model that we follow about remuneration and royalties. So this is something, I'll be very honest, we do not, as an editor, do not have much say in it. And I totally understand your point also. So also in academia, I think it's very difficult to kind of, for the remuneration and for the royalty part. I'm really sorry, I will not be able to add much to it, because this is the model that we receive from the publisher. So the second point, the value point, again, I'm an editor, but I'm not a subject expert. So as Professor Kumaraswamy mentioned, we publish a lot in Middle East studies, but I'm not a Middle East subject expert. So for this case, we totally rely on our peer reviewers. So we try to match the subject that we have received, the proposal that we have received, with the qualification, with the affiliation with of our peer reviewers. So we totally rely on our peer reviewers, and so when we receive the feedback from those peer reviewers, so I myself, as I mentioned in slide also, I myself analyze the feedback, how, if it is actually contributing something new to the field, or if it is just a repetition. So I generally receive quite I'll say, helpful feedback from those peer reviewers. So in this case, as a publisher, I'll say we kind of rely on subject experts like you.
Thank you, Sandeep, for clarifying these points. These are, especially the 2 points which Professor mentioned. I think these are perennial issues.
Yes.
And we obviously have to, as professionals in this industry, we have to kind of collectively strive for improvement and for being as ethical and as fair as possible. We also have Professor Shabani Rai Chaudhary with us. Ma'am, would you like to react? Say something about this issue? Ma'am, you are muted, so.
Okay. Thanks, Sandeep.
Thank you.
Listening to a publisher always creates a certain amount of anxiety and fear among people who publish. I usually go through it a lot more, and it brings to forefront things that we often miss out. And thanks for pointing it out. I feel that time and again we need to go through these kind of presentations, because it brings to forefront the misses that we have. I had a specific question for you with respect to how do we get copyright issues sorted out when we want to give maps in our works. In an IR, we often like to give maps because it sort of explains things far better, faster, easier. Similarly, in economics, we obviously have this huge issue of seeking approval, etc. Data, and if it's like for me, I have issues when I have to use a company data because we have to go ahead. Thing. My question is, you get one copyright once, like say from a company or an industry. Does it validate you till the book is in publication, or does it need to be revalidated?
Okay, so if I understand it correctly, you want to reproduce a particular map in your publication, right? Now, as I mentioned, you'll have to obtain copyright from from where it is previously published. But generally, the kind of permission they give you, it's only for that particular work in which it is going, you're publishing it. Say, for example, you're doing a book with Palgrave Macmillan with me, and you have a map. You'll have to get permission for Palgrave Macmillan to reproduce that map in the work. So it does not extend to any other publication that you do later on. For that publication, you will have to obtain permission again.
Okay, thanks.
I hope I'm able to answer your question.
Yeah, thanks on that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, ma'am.
Thanks, Sandeep. And thanks, ma'am. We have Gulshan ma'am also with us in the audience. Ma'am, if you are here, and would you like to react and say something on the subject? Maybe there might be some network issues. There's one question in the chat box. Ankita Sanyal has asked, uh, is the limit of citing another author's work differs from publishers to publishers, or is it something universal?
So am I audible?
Yeah.
Okay, so it's not universal as such. There's nothing universal in the publishing sector. So it depends on from where you are taking. For example, I'll give you an example. There's a publication house, Emerald Publishing. Lots of my authors take data from that particular one. That particular publication house, I mean, I don't know if I tell you this or not, that publication house gives authors to kind of, cite whatever they want to cite from the work that they have published with them. So for each publisher, they have their own set of rules. So as I mentioned, go back to the source and read. All the websites have rights and permission issues, web pages dedicated to it. There will be lots of FAQs. So uh, uh, kind of narrow down your sources, read about them, that how much you can take. There's no universal limit to it.
Thanks for clarifying that point, Sandeep. If there is anybody else who has questions,
can I ask, please, if you don't mind?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Sure,
Sandeep, it is very delightful because a lot of things you said, we don't even pay attention to that, especially the self-plagiarism part, and especially the UN documents, the limits they impose on. And very often we operate on the principle that as long as I can cite the source, I can quote any number of comma. These are all very useful ones. But
yes,
I have a question about thesis. Because if you look at it, some of the theses, the role of the supervisor is not just supervising the work, but also rewriting the text. Okay, if you look at it, there are cases, every single sentence had to be rewritten in the final thesis. So in those cases, I'm not saying as a right, but then what normally happens is, if that thesis is published into a book, and the teacher is probably acknowledged in the acknowledgement section, for all practical purposes, the kind of definition you put across, you would be a co-author. But then what happens is...
Exactly, that's what I said.
One second. If what happens is, suppose if I edit a thesis, if I make a corrections on a thesis of a student's work, and if I write on the same subject a separate article, I would be seen as plagiarizing the thesis work, even though the thesis contained ideas which I put across because it was a crude draft. The students did not even know. So therefore, I help improvising the draft. But when I write an article outside, it gives an impression I am plagiarizing a student's work. How do you resolve this dilemma?
Okay, this is it's very complicated, as you know, the whole debate. So as I mentioned also, so we generally take it case to case basis. So if a PhD researcher or scholar who has kind of completed his or her PhDs they come to us and say that they want to convert it into a book. So we generally ask them whether you would like to your supervisor to be your co-author and how involved they have been with you in the PhD dissertation, and how involved they will be when it is getting converted into a book. So yes, we have had cases where the supervisor is so actively involved. It's all again the same thing. It's almost like he or she is rewriting chapters for the research scholar. So for that case, the supervisor obviously becomes the co-author of the work. So that is how it is resolved. And I have had books where the PhD person has had the supervisor as the co-author. Now the second part, I think I might not have an answer for the second part, because that's a totally different kind of an ethical issue. So I don't think I have an answer to that. So you're a PhD supervisor, so it's the same subject, and the person has written a whole PhD and you're writing an article. So I think that should get resolved between the researcher and the supervisor. See, if it comes to me, then I'll be looking at it case to case basis.
See, since you're asking a supplementary question, if you put a book in which the supervisor as a co-author, that raises question about the thesis, right? Because the
Not the
degree
thesis.
is,
If
the
the
degree
book,
comes to individual's name, but the book which comes out of the thesis get a co-author. You know, you are opening a Pandora's box, right?
we haven't had any issue as such regarding this particular one, because the basic structure, even if we will talk about the technical structure of a PhD thesis and technical structure of a book, they're totally different. I mean, you'll have to develop your manuscript to turn it into a monograph or into a book. So, I mean, in such cases, supervisor, they generally kind of play more proactive role with the research scholars. So yes, we haven't had any issue as such. So it has been very amicable till now.
Yeah, I think that is something which again is I mean, your point is quite valid, but when it comes to the academic practices itself, some of these issues can be considered as unethical academic practices rather than just unethical.
Can I ask a
Yes, I know
second
the
question?
things can become, yes, sir.
Suppose, for instance, if a person is accused of plagiarism and he was vilified and criticized in the sense, and he admits that he plagiarized either knowingly or unknowingly. As a publisher of a journal or a book or as a publishing house, would you give a second chance to that person? The person has plagiarism is well established. Will you give a second chance?
If it is, as you say, well established, and again, if it's a single case or if it has been a multiple cases, so it totally depends on the profile of the author when he or she comes to me or comes to the publisher. If there have been a multiple cases of plagiarism, then obviously no, it will be a clear no. If it has been a single case, then we can have a little bit of give a benefit of doubt that it could have been unintentional. But then again, it's again case to case basis. We'll be going back and looking at the history and what kind of plagiarism was it. So again, it's a case to case basis.
So what do you mean? For instance, a whole article was copied and presented in somebody's name and the original author, and subsequently the article was withdrawn by the journal because plagiarism was established. My question is, as a fellow academic, should I collaborate with that kind of person?
Exactly. That is the question that you will have to answer. Yes, exactly. That becomes quite an ethical dilemma for you as well. So again, if say, for example, I'll take you as an example. Say this for this particular researcher. So if you are collaborating, you're still ready to collaborate with this person or this person A for a book or for an article, then I might still kind of look at the history and get it peer reviewed and get it peer reviewed with more scrutiny, because you are kind of associated with that person. So it totally also becomes a case of because you are also putting your academic I'll say integrity at risk here. So it means you have seen something there. So again, it depends also on the relationship with the publisher that you share in this particular example.
Thanks,
Sandeep. I think for clarifying some of these points, and obviously there is always this overlap between academic integrity and publication ethics. If anybody else has any questions, they can let me know, and we can kind of continue with the discussion. Yes, Dr. Sajib Bala, if you have any questions or
yes,
comments.
thank you so much for giving this chance, because I am new in this field. So I am hearing some of the very resourceful narratives or discussion, especially thanks to Sandeep that he informed me or mailed me that such kind of discussion will be happen today. That means tomorrow, this day. Anyway, there is many discussion about plagiarism, but I don't have much idea, but I have a very simple question that, uh, as already Joseph said, that even we write something already written, but about 90% or 10% or sometimes 50%, if you check by some kind of software, some kind of plagiarism software, that you may find this blue color or something that 10% or 15% is under plagiarism. Okay, is there any criteria? Is there any you do fixed your Palgrave Macmillan fixed that this percentage is under this plagiarism? Suppose 10%. If you accept 10% or 15%, I don't know exactly. Do you fix in your publication or not? Or if you fix, what percentage?
So I receive this question a lot. So there's no fixed percentage. It's all again case to case basis. So for each book, say for your book has 10 chapters, we'll be running those 10 chapters through plagiarism software, and then I'll be analyzing each chapter one by one. So there can be a say a 12% plagiarism only, but it can be too much from a single source. So all the 12% is from a single journal article. So that becomes a case of plagiarism, or that becomes a case of unintentional plagiarism, or maybe you need to obtain permission from that for the journal article. So again, there's no universal percentage about it. Or that 10% can be technical terms. So technical terms is something you cannot avoid. The plagiarism software is definitely going to pick up those terms and show it as a plagiarism. So that's why we analyze each chapter one by one.
Okay. I have another or second question that you are discussing about duplicate publication. That sometimes you are saying that younger authors are don't willing to wait. So sometimes not you. What is the status of my book, or what is this that? Okay, you are saying that first time you have to review for 2 peer reviewers. Then we have to wait, but many times we don't have some idea, so sometimes we mail and, sometimes we feel bother also. So if you first time you select 2 peer review, but this is the final review or another second review or that another review, and how many reviewer then?
Okay, so in my case, in Palgrave Macmillan case, so we get the proposal review first from the 2 peer reviewers. So it depends on what kind of feedback that we have received. If the feedback is suggesting that these some major revisions in the work, or say saying that there has to be certain even structural changes in the work. So it depends on the author. So when they submit the manuscript to us, and if there have been extensive or there have been major changes in the book, which is like different from the proposal that we had received, then it definitely goes through peer review. But generally 80% of our full manuscripts, they go through peer review process, even after proposal peer review.
I am saying that the final manuscript submission, after final manuscript submission.
Yes, it does go through peer review also.
It takes much time. I mean, one month, 2 months.
See, again, we generally give ideal for full manuscript. We generally give them 1 month, 1.5 months. But peer reviewers, they're subject experts. They're really busy, so sometimes it does get stretched to 2 months or a little bit more than 2 months. That does happen.
Like the first 2 review, there is another 2 or 3 review, or only limited?
No. For full manuscript, there will be a proper 1 or 2 reviews for the full manuscript.
Okay, thank you so much for your experience.
Thank you.
Actually, all of these slides helps us a lot.
Thank you so much.
Because I have joining such kind of discussion for the first time, and I also like to give thanks for the organizer. I am not sure who are the organizer or who are arranging this. Please do this kind of.
Professor Kumara Swami is the organizer, so thank you so much.
I'm here. Thanks. So nice of you.
So thanks, Dr. Sajeev. I think the sentiments you are expressing you are actually expressing a lot of sentiments which is common to all of us.
Yes, because another thing is today is the victory day of my country. That means Bangladesh.
Yes.
Oh, yes.
So
good to see you.
So there is a question from Samina ma'am. You wanted to ask something on databases, if you can.
Yeah, thanks, Muddassir. I'll put it across. Thanks, Sandeep. That was really very useful pointers that you put across. I have a slight confusion. when we use databases, and you rightly pointed out that they are available for non-commercial use, and I have always been very happily considering my work as non-commercial, because not all or publishers are as generous as Palgrave, or even in Palgrave case also you might feel that, as Professor Kishishian said, that what you get at the end is just pittance. So I've always considered as non-commercial, but now you saying that commercial. So we can. So the question is, supposing as a person who works on databases, and sometimes you have to work with multiple databases. So it's a Herculean task to get permissions for all of them. How do you go to? I mean, how do you suggest to handle this?
I'll generally suggest my authors to handle this book by book cases. So I'm sure if you're working at one time, you might be working on maximum of 2 books, or say 2 journal articles. I know, and so I can see Professor Kumaraswamy laughing. So sir, please let me answer this first. So, go by book by book basis. So technically, the work you are publishing with any publisher, that's a commercial entity. That's not a non-commercial entity, even if you would like it to believe it's so. So when it comes to commercial entity, or there comes limits to how much data you can take from those databases. As I mentioned in the last, you should be aware as an author. Try to go to those websites and read how much you can take, and how much you can freely take, and how much for how much you would need to obtain permissions. Generally you get permissions. I have like lots of authors, they write and obtain permissions and submit those permissions to us. So again, I'll say, take it book by book cases.
Okay. That's all.
I think in especially in subjects, for example, demographic studies or issues related to economics, the use of database and this dilemma of how much you can actually use from open sources, or as you were saying, UN and WHO. This is always something which would be bothering authors. But in some other subjects, for example, if you're writing in IR, where it is not very data incentive, or it's not a quantitative work as such, sometimes this might not be that much of a problem. So it is easier to kind of take permission. So I understand from where ma'am is coming from, and why is she asking a question, because especially when it comes to economic issues, economic data are very hard to find, and you can't really generate all of this data on your own. Certainly it creates a problem for people who work with statistics and data. If there are no
I have a small point.
Yeah.
Sandeep, I'm going to be very normal. I don't ask questions, but today I decided, I can exploit your generosity. And you talks about conflict of interest. And I think since we are talking about publication in a broad sense of the word, we're not talking only Palgrave or a book publishing. But if you look at a lot of foreign trips are sponsored. People go on a foreign trip, mostly journalists and others, on a trip sponsored by the host government. But if you're talking about conflicts and ethics, is it necessary they should actually disclose that this trip was sponsored by the host country? I'm reporting my meetings and everything, and whatever they write, favorably or unfavorably. Is it necessary for even journalists to make a complete disclosure that their visits have been sponsored by the host countries, or even this home country, whichever is the case? Is it necessary to disclose in public?
Yes, not in public. First of all, it is necessary to disclose, but not to public. Maybe, for example, in the journalist case, they should declare. So have you seen these kind of articles? At the end, they will have a small line mentioning that this particular trip to this particular area to write about this particular topic has been sponsored by this. So journalists do declare these kind of funding also. Even in the publishing case, if you have received some kind of funding for the field research that you have done specifically for this book, not for the bigger field research, specifically for this particular book, we expect and we ask our authors to declare it to us. that you had received funding, even if you have only hired an RA from that funding. So it's, yes, it is necessary to declare it.
And one question, if you look at in the academic arena, most of them are friends. If you're dealing with the subject, at least you are expected to know all the other people who are writing on the field. Whether it's a Saudi Arabia, whether it's Israel, if you don't know your peer, then you are not a scholar. At the same time, your manuscript will be reviewed by, most probably, by a friend. Okay, there is no way you can avoid, because if you're writing on Saudi Arabia, there is no way you can avoid Shishia. No way. So therefore, how do you resolve this dilemma?
One phrase, double-blind peer review. So we generally, all of our manuscripts go through double-blind peer review. We do not reveal who the author is, and we do not reveal who the reviewer is. And obviously, we need subject experts. And as you mentioned, for a particular, very specific field, there will be limited number of subject experts. So we do a double-blind peer review.
People will know. People will know by the style of the writing, by the questions you're writing, and people will immediately know who the person is. There is not
then we trust the integrity. Then we trust the integrity of the peer reviewer.
Okay, so it's unavoidable. Unavoidable.
Yes, yes, technically yes.
Okay. This is the dilemma one faces. Okay, just because you know the person, you will. Okay.
I think your points are, it's very valid, and in a way it's also not avoidable, and in a way it's also a question about the integrity of person who is reviewing. So it's not only the integrity of the authors,
exactly,
but also the integrity of the reviewers also, in terms of whether they they're giving a benefit of doubt, if they know the person who has done the work, or if they understand that who has done the work. So certainly, I mean, the question of ethics cannot be completely made devoid of the question of integrity. That is something which I think understand from what you are trying to.
Yes, it's very complex, the whole issue. I mean, in fact, all the issues are related. They'll be really complex. So we generally try to take each issue chapter wise, or say book wise. So each case by case basis, we generally go.
Yeah. So if there are if there is any other question, anybody who has any points or would like to react from the audience, as actually I think in the chat box, if you look at it, many people have written that how much they appreciate your your presentation. So this shows that and also because mostly we don't have this kind of discussions where sometimes even if these kind of discussions help you refresh your understanding. Sometimes people forget, overlook things. So I think this is something which we should perhaps do even more, and interact with the editors like you. Certainly I have personally benefited some of the things which sometimes you work as editor and as an author simultaneously. Some of these things one faces. So certainly my understanding also personally, I've benefited from your talk today, and most of us I think would feel the same way. All of us, even the younger scholars and senior scholars also. So I think I would now request Sir to give his concluding remarks if there are no other questions.
Okay, thanks, Muddassir.